The Awakening beneath the crust. The planet Tarvos 3 hung in the inky blackness of space, its surface a mosaic of jagged ice fields and sulfuric winds that howled endlessly across its frozen terrain. Despite its hostility, humanity had chosen this forsaken world as the site of one of its remote research colonies, hoping to uncover the secrets buried deep within its ancient crust. In the quiet confines of Outpost 17, 12-year-old Lena Voss darted between towering crates of equipment, her breath fogging the air inside the temperature-controlled corridors. She wasn't supposed to be here, not in the restricted sublevels where her father, Dr. Alan Voss, conducted his work. But curiosity had always been Lena's guiding star, often pulling her into situations she wasn't quite prepared for. Her father's hurried conversations with the research team echoed in her mind. Something had been discovered beneath the ice, something that defied explanation. It wasn't like the usual mineral deposits or geological oddities they had encountered before. This was different. Lena crouched beside a console in the dimly lit lab, her fingers hovering over the touch-sensitive display. The screen flickered to life, revealing a 3D projection of what lay beneath the colony. Her eyes widened. It was a structure, massive and intricately designed, buried kilometers below the surface. Unlike anything she'd seen in textbooks, the architecture seemed alive, its jagged edges pulsing faintly as if responding to some invisible rhythm. The sound of footsteps jolted Lena from her thoughts. She ducked behind a stack of equipment just as her father and two other researchers entered the room. "Alan, are we certain this isn't a natural formation?" one of the researchers asked, his voice tinged with both awe and fear. Dr. Voss shook his head. "The scans are conclusive. The material doesn't match any known compounds, and the energy signatures, they're off the charts. We've never encountered anything like it before." Another researcher spoke up, her voice trembling. "If it's not natural, then it's artificial," Dr. Voss finished, his tone grave. "And very old." Lena's heart raced. She knew she shouldn't be eavesdropping, but the mystery tugged at her like a magnet. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a scientific anomaly. It was something much bigger. The next morning, Lena found herself staring out the window of her small quarters, the icy wasteland beyond the glass stretching endlessly. Her father had left early for another expedition to the dig site, and the colony was abuzz with activity. It wasn't long before her curiosity got the better of her. Clad in a thermal suit that dwarfed her small frame, Lena slipped past the guards stationed near the entrance to the excavation tunnel. The air grew colder as she descended deeper, the dim lighting casting eerie shadows on the frosted walls. Finally, she reached the chamber. It was enormous, a cavern carved out by both nature and human machinery. In the center of the room stood the Discovery, a massive structure, dark and monolithic, its surface etched with glowing symbols that seemed to shift and change as she watched. "What is this place?" Lena whispered, her voice barely audible. "Something not meant for us," came a voice from behind. Lena whirled around to see her father, his expression a mixture of anger and concern. "Lena, you shouldn't be here. This isn't a playground." I wanted to see it," she stammered. "Dad, what is it?" Dr. Voss sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "We don't know. It's been here for millennia, maybe longer. But whatever it is, it's alive." Before Lena could respond, the ground beneath them trembled. A low hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. The glowing symbols on the structure flared brighter, and a wave of energy surged outward, sending a shiver through everyone in the room. "What's happening?" Lena shouted, clutching her father's arm. "The structure. It's responding to something," Dr. Voss said, his voice filled with urgency. "We need to get out of here." But as they turned to leave, the symbols coalesced into a single point of light at the center of the structure. The light expanded rapidly, enveloping the room in a blinding flash. When it subsided, Lena found herself standing alone. She was no longer in the chamber. Instead, she stood in what appeared to be a control room, its walls made of the same pulsating material as the structure. Panels of light and shifting patterns surrounded her, and in the center of the room floated a translucent sphere, its surface swirling with energy. "Where am I?" Lena murmured, her voice trembling. "You have been chosen," a voice said, deep and resonant, echoing within the chamber. Lena spun around, but there was no one there. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Chosen for what?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. "To awaken what has been dormant," the voice replied. "To bridge the past and the present." Before Lena could ask another question, the sphere began to change. Images flickered across its surface, stars, planets, and civilizations rising and falling. It was a history far beyond anything she had learned in school, a story of a galaxy teeming with life and conflict. "Humanity is but a fragment of the whole," the voice continued. "But you are the key." The sphere pulsed, and a beam of light shot toward Lena, enveloping her in warmth. She felt knowledge pouring into her mind, understanding of technologies and concepts that were alien yet familiar. She gasped as the realization hit her. This wasn't just a discovery, it was a call to action. When the light faded, Lena found herself back in the chamber, her father shaking her shoulder. "Lena, are you okay?" I'm fine," she said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts racing through her mind. She glanced at the structure, now silent and still. "Dad, we're not alone in the universe. And this is just the beginning." Dr. Voss stared at her, bewildered. "What are you talking about?" Lena met his gaze, determination shining in her eyes. "I think I know what it wants, and I think it's time we listen." As the team regrouped around them, the structure remained silent, a sleeping giant awaiting its moment to awaken again. Little did they know, the ripple it had sent through the cosmos had already set things in motion. Forces far beyond Tavos 3 were beginning to stir. The signal that shook the stars. Lena sat in her small quarters, the faint hum of the colony's generators filling the silence. The events of the previous day were fresh in her mind. The light, the voice, and the overwhelming knowledge that had flooded her thoughts. She couldn't shake the feeling that the structure beneath the ice was more than just a relic of the past. It was a message waiting to be understood. Her father, Dr. Alan Voss, had insisted she stay away from the set a course for Tavos, Eris commanded. If the humans have discovered it, they might already be trying to activate it. Back on Tavos 3, chaos erupted as the research team detected the same transmission. Alarms blared across the colony, and Dr. Voss burst into the room where Lena was hiding with Echo. "Lena, what did you do?" he demanded, his face pale. "I didn't do anything," she protested. It just started glowing when I touched it." Dr. Voss sighed, rubbing his temples. "The entire colony's comm systems are overwhelmed. We're picking up a transmission, but it's not in any language we recognize. And now we're detecting an object approaching the planet." "Approaching?" Lena echoed, her stomach sinking. "What kind of object?" Dr. Voss turned to Echo, who was already processing the data. "It's a spacecraft," the drone reported. "Approximately 3 kilometers in length, alien origin." Hours later, the alien ship entered orbit around Tavos 3. Its sleek, angular design cast an ominous shadow of the frozen world. From the colony's observation deck, Lena and the rest of the research team watched a smaller craft descended toward the planet's surface. "We need to prepare for first contact," Dr. Voss said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "If they're here for the structure, we need to ensure this doesn't escalate into a conflict." Lena clenched her fists. She felt responsible for all of this, even though she didn't fully understand what was happening. The voice she'd heard in the structure echoed in her mind. "You are the key." As the alien craft landed near the excavation site, a team of Veylan disembarked. Their tall, sinewy forms moved with precision, their glowing eyes scanning the humans who had gathered to meet them. At the front stood Captain Ares, her presence commanding and unyielding. "Humans," she said, her voice resonating in the cold air. We are the Valen, and we come in peace. But this relic does not belong to you. Dr. Voss stepped forward, trying to project calm. We discovered it buried here. We mean no harm, but we also don't fully understand what it is. Ares studied him for a moment before her gaze shifted to Lena, who was partially hidden behind her father. Her eyes narrowed. You, she said, pointing at the girl, the relic has chosen you. The crowd murmured in confusion as Lena stepped forward hesitantly. I don't know what it wants, she admitted, but I think it's trying to tell us something. Ares nodded, her expression softening slightly. Then perhaps there is hope. The relics were created to guide those who seek knowledge, but they are also dangerous. If activated improperly, they could destroy entire worlds. Dr. Voss stiffened. What do you mean? Ares gestured toward the structure. It's a key, one of many. Together, they unlock the path to a power greater than anything you can imagine. But that power has a cost. It must not fall into the wrong hands. As night fell on Tavos 3, the humans and Valen worked together to decipher the structure's secrets. Lena found herself at the center of it all, her mind racing with questions. Why had the relic chosen her? What was this power it guarded? And most importantly, could humanity and the Valen learn to trust one another long enough to uncover the truth? Unbeknownst to them, the signal sent by the relic had reached others in the galaxy, beings far less benevolent than the Valen. As distant stars flickered with activity, the race for the relics had begun, and the fragile alliance between humans and Valen would soon be tested in ways they could never have imagined. The alliance and the hidden threat. The air inside the excavation chamber was heavy with tension. The Valen delegation stood apart from the human researchers, their towering forms exuding an air of quiet authority. Captain Ares, the leader of the Valen, spoke in low tones with Dr. Voss, while the others worked tirelessly to analyze the relic's pulsating symbols. In the center of it all stood Lena, her small frame dwarfed by the towering presence of the artifact. The glowing patterns on the relic seemed to shift and flow as if responding to their combined efforts. Lena felt a strange connection to it, as though it were alive and aware of her presence. She clenched her fists, trying to push back the overwhelming sense of responsibility that had been thrust upon her. The beginning of trust. It is not mere coincidence that the relic has activated now, Captain Ares said, her voice calm but firm. The timing is deliberate. The device has been dormant for millennia, waiting for the right circumstances to awaken. Dr. Voss frowned, his brow furrowed in thought. But why now, and why her? He gestured toward Lena, who was quietly observing the interaction. Ares studied Lena for a moment, her glowing eyes narrowing. The relics were designed by an ancient race known as the Eldara. They sought individuals who embody qualities necessary for survival, resilience, creativity, and the ability to inspire unity. Your daughter possesses these traits, whether she realizes it or not. Lena blinked, surprised. I'm just a kid, she said, her voice trembling. How could I be important to something this big? Sometimes it is the smallest flame that ignites the greatest change, Ares replied, her tone softening. You are the catalyst, but you do not have to face this alone. Dr. Voss placed a protective hand on Lena's shoulder. If she's involved, then I'm involved. What do we need to do? Ares straightened, her commanding presence returning. We must access the relic's core, but the process will not be easy. It requires a bond between those who seek its secrets, a unity of purpose. Only then will the artifact reveal its true potential. The relic's challenge. The chamber trembled as the relic responded to their words. A beam of light shot out from its surface, forming a swirling vortex in the air. Within the vortex, symbols and images began to take shape, a map of the galaxy, with several points glowing faintly. Ares' expression grew grave. These are the other relics, she said. The Eldara scattered them across the galaxy to protect their knowledge. Each one holds a piece of the puzzle. If we are to understand the relic here, we must connect it with the others. Dr. Voss frowned. That's easier said than done. Even with Valen technology, the distances between these points are vast. Not just vast, Ares added, her voice tinged with unease. Dangerous. We are not the only ones who seek these relics. The Drakthar, a warlike species, have been hunting them for centuries. If they learn of this activation, they will come, and they will stop at nothing to claim it. Lena's heart sank. She had heard stories of the Drakthar, merciless conquerors who left destruction in their wake. The idea of them coming to Tavos 3 filled her with dread. So we don't have much time, she said, her voice steadier than she expected. What's the plan? Building the alliance. Over the next few days, humans and Valen worked side by side to prepare for what lay ahead. The fragile trust between the two species was tested as cultural differences and mutual suspicion created moments of tension. But Lena, driven by her newfound sense of purpose, became an unexpected bridge between the two groups. She spent hours with both the Valen engineers and the human scientists, learning about their technologies and methods. Her natural curiosity and willingness to listen broke down barriers, and soon laughter and shared stories replaced the earlier unease. Ares noticed Lena's efforts and approached her one evening as she studied the glowing symbols on the relic. "You've done more to unite our people in a few days than I could have hoped for," Ares said, her tone thoughtful. Lena shrugged. "I just don't think it matters where we're from or what we look like. We're all trying to figure this out together, right?" Ares nodded, a rare smile bracing her lips. "The Eldara would have approved of you, Lena Voss. You remind me of why I took this path, to seek understanding, not dominance." The hidden threat. Despite the growing cooperation, a shadow loomed over the colony. The signal sent by the relic had traveled far, reaching the Drakthar. On a distant world, a massive Drakthar warship, bristling with weapons, prepared to launch. Its leader, Warlord Kelgor, stood on the bridge, his crimson eyes fixed on the holographic display of Tavos 3. "The relics are awakening," he growled, his voice a low rumble. "And these weaklings think they can claim them. We will show them the folly of their arrogance." Kelgor turned to his second-in-command, a cunning strategist named Valak. "Prepare the fleet. When we arrive, there will be no negotiations." "Yes, Warlord," Valak replied, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "The relic and the power it holds will be ours." The countdown begins. Back on Tavos 3, Lena stood in the control room of the colony, staring at the galactic map displayed on the central console. Each glowing point represented a relic, and each relic represented another step in their journey. But she couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Ares approached her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "The first step is always the hardest," she said, "but you've already taken it. Now we must take the next." Lena nodded, determination etched on her young face. "We're not just fighting for the relics. We're fighting for a chance to prove that cooperation is stronger than conflict." As the humans and Valen prepared to leave Tavos 3, the relic in the excavation chamber began to glow brighter, its energy pulsing in time with Lena's heartbeat. It was as if the artifact itself was urging them forward. But unknown to them, the Drakthar fleet was already en route, and their arrival would change everything. The fragile alliance between humanity and the Valen would soon face its ultimate test, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The Drakthar's arrival. The calm over Tavos 3 was shattered by the thunderous roar of alarms. Across the colony, lights flashed a warning, casting eerie shadows against the icy walls. Researchers and engineers scrambled to their posts as the colony's scanners picked up a fleet of massive warships descending from orbit. It didn't take long to confirm the worst. The Drakthar had arrived. In the central command room, Dr. Voss, Captain Ares, and Lena stood around a glowing hologram of the incoming fleet. The vessels were monstrous, their angular designs bristling with weapons and emitting a malevolent red glow. At the center of the formation was the Drakthar flagship, larger than anything the humans or Valen had ever encountered. "They're coming for the relic," Eris said, her voice heavy with the weight of experience. The Drakthar will not negotiate. They see only conquest. Lena clenched her fists, fear threatening to overwhelm her. What can we do? We can't just let them take it. Dr. Voss placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll figure this out, Lena. We have to. Preparing for battle. In the hours that followed, the humans and Veylan worked tirelessly to fortify the colony. Eris and her crew brought advanced shielding technology from their ship, creating a protective dome over the excavation site. Meanwhile, the human engineers rigged automated defenses from mining equipment and scavenged parts. Lena, unable to stand idly by, joined a group of technicians in the central command room. She worked alongside Echo to enhance the colony's communication systems, hoping to find a way to disrupt the Drakthar's technology. Lena, Echo said as it floated beside her, its voice tinged with concern. This is a dangerous game. The Drakthar are not known for mercy. I know, Lena replied, tightening a loose cable, but we can't just give up. If the relics fall into their hands, it'll be worse for everyone. As the first Drakthar ships entered the atmosphere, the ground trembled beneath the colony. Lena's heart raced, but she refused to give in to fear. She remembered the voice from the relic, the feeling that it had chosen her for a reason. First contact with the enemy. The Drakthar's ships landed with deafening booms, their enormous claws digging into the frozen ground. From the flagship's belly, a ramp extended, and warlord Kelgor emerged, his imposing frame wrapped in armor that shimmered like molten metal. His crimson eyes scanned the colony, and a cruel smile twisted his lips. Behind him marched rows of Drakthar warriors, each one armed with devastating plasma weaponry. Their movements were precise, their discipline unnerving. Eris stepped forward to meet them, flanked by her Veylan soldiers and Dr. Voss. Lena watched from a nearby vantage point, her pulse pounding in her ears. Kelga's deep, gravelly voice echoed across the icy plains. Humans and Veylan, you have no claim to the relic. It is the right of the strong to take what they desire. Surrender it, and I may spare your pitiful colony. Eris met his gaze, unflinching. The relic does not belong to you, Kelgor. It is not a weapon for conquest. It is a key to knowledge, meant to unite, not destroy. Kelgor laughed, a sound that sent chills down Lena's spine. Your words are weak, Captain. Knowledge is power, and power belongs to those willing to take it. Dr. Voss stepped forward, his voice steady despite the danger. This artifact isn't fully understood. If you activate it recklessly, you could destroy everything, your fleet, this planet, maybe even the entire system. Kelgor's smile vanished, replaced by a look of cold determination. Then you leave me no choice. He raised his hand, signaling his forces to advance. The first skirmish. The battle erupted in a flash of light and sound. The colony's makeshift defenses sprang to life, automated turrets firing bursts of energy that lit up the dark sky. The Veylan soldiers moved with practiced precision, their sleek weapons sending arcs of blue energy toward the advancing Drakthar. Lena watched in awe and terror as the two sides clashed. She could see Eris at the forefront, her four arms wielding dual plasma rifles with deadly efficiency. Dr. Voss stayed back, coordinating the human forces and directing power to the shields protecting the excavation site. But the Drakthar were relentless. Their sheer numbers and advanced weaponry began to overwhelm the defenders. Lena's hands trembled as she worked to patch into the Drakthar's communication systems, hoping to find a weakness. Echo, she said, her voice tight with urgency. Can you isolate their command frequency? I'm attempting to, Lena, Echo replied, its processors whirring. But their encryption is unlike anything I've encountered. A sudden explosion rocked the colony, throwing Lena to the ground. She scrambled to her feet, her ears ringing, and saw that part of the shield dome had collapsed. Drakthar warriors surged toward the excavation site, their weapons trained on the relic. No, Lena shouted, grabbing a small handheld device she had been modifying. Without thinking, she ran toward the breach. Lena's gamble. As she approached the relic, Lena's mind raced. The Drakthar were closing in, and the defenders were outnumbered. She knew the relic held immense power, but she didn't fully understand it. Could she risk using it? The glowing patterns on the relic seemed to respond to her presence, pulsing faster as she drew near. Lena placed her hand on its surface, and a surge of energy coursed through her. "Lena, what are you doing?" Dr. Voss shouted, his voice filled with panic. "I have to try," she yelled back. "It's the only way." The relic's patterns shifted, forming a complex sequence that Lena instinctively understood. She entered the sequence into the handheld device she had modified, and the relic began to hum with power. A wave of energy erupted from the relic, engulfing the battlefield. The Drakthar soldiers froze, their weapons shorting out as the energy disrupted their systems. Even Kelgor staggered, his armor sparking violently. "What have you done?" Kelgor roared, his voice filled with fury. Lena stepped forward, her voice steady despite her fear. "This isn't your power to take. If you try to use it for destruction, it will fight back." Kelgor glared at her, but before he could respond, Ares and her soldiers pressed their advantage, driving the Drakthar back toward their ships. A fragile victory. As the Drakthar retreated, the colony erupted in cheers, but Lena knew the battle was far from over. The relic's energy had bought them time, but it had also revealed the incredible power it contained, a power that others would surely come for. Ares approached Lena, her expression one of both admiration and caution. "You've proven yourself, Lena Voss, but this is only the beginning. The relic has chosen you, and now you must choose how to use its gift." Lena nodded, her determination unwavering. "We have to find the other relics. If we don't, someone else will, and they might not use them for good." Dr. Voss placed a hand on her shoulder, pride and concern etched on his face. "We'll face this together, Lena. Whatever comes next, we'll be ready." As the humans and Valen regrouped, the relic pulsed faintly, as if acknowledging their resolve. But far above, the Drakthar flagship lingered in orbit, its commander plotting his next move. The war for the relics had only just begun. The secrets of the relic. The aftermath of the battle left the colony in a fragile state of relief. Though they had repelled the Drakthar for now, the scars of the conflict were visible everywhere. Charred defenses, damaged equipment, and exhausted faces. Yet among the wreckage, hope flickered. The relic had responded to Lena, and its energy had turned the tide. It was clear now that the artifact held far more than ancient technology. It was a sentinel of unimaginable potential. But Lena couldn't shake the weight of what she had unleashed. As she stood in the chamber where the relic loomed silently, she ran her fingers along the cold, glowing surface. Its patterns pulsed faintly, as if alive, waiting. "I still don't understand why it chose me," she murmured. "You don't have to understand everything yet," Captain Ares said, stepping into the chamber. "Sometimes the answer comes after the journey begins, deciphering the patterns." The relic's map of glowing points had left the humans and Valen with a clear mission: locate the other relics scattered across the galaxy. But interpreting the relic's messages was proving to be a monumental challenge. Its symbols were unlike any known language, shifting and morphing with each attempt to decode them. Ares and her science officer, Rilath, worked alongside Dr. Voss to analyze the patterns. Meanwhile, Lena sat with Echo, her mind racing as she recalled the moment the relic had shared its knowledge with her. "It's not a language," she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the low hum of the chamber. Dr. Voss looked up, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Lena pointed at the symbols. "It's more like instructions. When I touched the relic, I didn't see words. I saw movements, shapes, and connections. It's trying to show us how to find the others." Rilath tilted his head, his glowing eyes narrowing. "You believe it's a form of visual logic." "Exactly," Lena said. "But it's not just about seeing, it's about feeling. like it wants us to understand on a deeper level. Ares nodded thoughtfully. Then you must be the one to guide us. The relic speaks to you in a way it doesn't to others. Preparing for the journey. With Lena's insight, the team began to make progress. The relic's patterns revealed coordinates to the next artifact, located on a distant world known as Zephyrus 9. The planet was a lush, uncharted wilderness, rumored to be rich with exotic wildlife, but fraught with danger. The Valen's sleek starship, the Horizon's Edge, became the centerpiece of their preparations. Its advanced navigation systems and stealth capabilities made it the best choice for the journey. The humans worked tirelessly alongside the Valen crew to retrofit the ship with additional defenses, knowing the Drakthar would undoubtedly pursue them. Lena found herself drawn to the ship's heart, the navigation chamber, where a holographic map of the galaxy floated in dazzling detail. She spent hours staring at the map, tracing the glowing points of the relics and imagining the challenges they would face. Scared, Ares asked one evening, finding Lena alone in the chamber. A little, Lena admitted, but mostly unexcited. It feels like I'm part of something bigger than I ever imagined. Ares smiled. You are, and that's why we must stay focused. The journey ahead will test all of us. The shadow of the Drakthar. Unbeknownst to the humans and Valan, the Drakthar were far from defeated. Aboard their flagship, Warlord Kelgor seethed with rage. The loss on Tarvos III had been a humiliation, but it had also revealed something invaluable. The relics were awakening, and the humans had a guide. Kelgor stood in the war room, staring at a projection of Lena's face. That child holds the key, he growled. She has bonded with the relic. Without her, the humans are nothing. Valak, his cunning second-in-command, leaned forward. Then we take her, Warlord. Let them lead us to the next relic, and when the time is right, we strike. Kelgor's crimson eyes glinted with malice. Prepare a shadow fleet. We will follow them to Zephyrus 9, and when the time comes, we will claim what is rightfully ours. A leap into the unknown. The day of departure arrived. Lena stood on the observation deck of the Horizon's Edge, watching Tarvos III shrink into the distance as the ship broke through the planet's atmosphere. The stars stretched before her, vast and unending, each one a pinprick of light in the void. Dr. Voss joined her, his expression a mix of pride and worry. You've come a long way, Lena. I'm proud of you. She smiled, though her mind was already on the journey ahead. Do you think we'll find it? The next relic? I think if anyone can, it's you, he said. Just remember, you're not alone in this. As the ship entered hyperspace, the crew settled into their roles. Ares commanded with steady confidence, her Valan officers navigating the challenges of human collaboration. Lena became an unlikely bridge between the two groups, her natural curiosity and determination inspiring both sides. But the journey was far from smooth. The Drakthar's shadow fleet pursued them relentlessly, forcing the Horizon's Edge to take risky detours through asteroid fields and uncharted systems. Each encounter brought them closer to disaster, yet the crew's unity held firm. Zephyrus 9, a world of mystery. When they finally arrived at Zephyrus 9, the planet was as breathtaking as it was foreboding. Towering emerald canopies stretched toward the sky, and rivers of glowing liquid carved intricate paths through the lush terrain. But beneath the beauty lay danger. The scanners detected strange energy signatures, suggesting the presence of advanced defenses guarding the relic. As the crew prepared to descend, Lena felt a strange pull, as though the relic itself was calling to her. She stood in the landing bay, her resolve hardening. This is it, she said, the next piece of the puzzle. Ares placed a hand on her shoulder. Stay sharp, Lena. Zephyrus 9 may look beautiful, but it will test us in ways we can't predict. With that, the team boarded the shuttle, their hearts pounding as they plunged into the unknown. Above them, hidden among the stars, the Drakthar fleet waited, ready to strike. The race for the relics had entered its next chapter, and the stakes had never been higher.